spoken in a moment that almost slipped by unnoticed, could shake the entire narrative ARMY has long believed about Jungkook and Taehyung, and even more shocking, that this sentence was deliberately held back until the final moments before a major tour began, as if it were a long-guarded key finally unlocked by Park Hyung Sik himself. That sentence did not arrive with the blast of a press conference, nor was it accompanied by an official announcement or excessive camera flashes. And that is precisely where its gravity lies. When Park Hyung Sik finally spoke, his tone was calm, his language measured, almost academic, yet the meaning cut straight to the heart of years of circulating speculation. ARMY members who heard it or reread it repeatedly suddenly fell silent. Not out of disappointment, but because one enormous question seemed to find a crack of an answer that had long felt impossible to reach. Why now? Why before the tour begins? And why Park Hyung Sik, a figure who stands at the intersection of the acting world and the idol industry? Who became the trigger for this moment? For years, the relationship between Jungkook and Taehyung has been more than a topic of discussion. It has been a field of interpretation. Every glance on stage, every fraction of a second pause during live broadcasts, every ambiguous sentence behind the scenes has been analyzed with an intensity that almost resembles academic research. ARMY is not merely a fan base. They are readers of signs, interpreters of body language, archivists of collective memory. Yet within all of this, there has always been an empty space, a gap of information that felt deliberate, as though there were a layer of reality never fully revealed. Park Hyung Sik, with his unique position as a top-tier actor and someone who moves within the same Korean entertainment industry circle, has often been mentioned as a silent witness. His name surfaced repeatedly in fan conversations, not as the center of drama, but as a figure who might know more. Until now, he chose silence. Whenever questions, implicit or explicit, arose, his answers were safe, neutral, almost diplomatic. So when he finally spoke, it was only natural that the impact felt like a small earthquake, its tremors spreading rapidly throughout the ARMY community. What made Park Hyung Sik's sentence so destabilizing was not a vulgar confession or a sensational revelation. Quite the opposite. He spoke with extreme care in his choice of words. He did not disclose explicit details, nor did he directly confirm rumors. Yet within the structure of his sentences lay the clues that had long been sought. It was as if he said it without actually saying it, that what ARMY had been seeing all along was not coincidence, nor merely the product of collective imagination. ARMY's initial reaction reflected a deep emotional confusion. Social media timelines were suddenly flooded with clipped quotes, screenshots, and renewed analyses. Some were shocked, others felt validated, while a portion experienced a sadness they struggled to explain. Why would sadness emerge when a secret begins to surface? Perhaps because the mystery itself had become part of the collective emotional experience. When one curtain starts to lift, a sense of loss becomes inevitable, yet the timing cannot be ignored. The major tour about to begin is not merely a series of concerts, it is a global narrative stage, where every move by Jungkook and Taehyung will once again fall under the public microscope. Was Park Hyung Sik's statement an attempt to temper speculation before expectations reach their peak? Or was it, instead, a signal that what would appear on stage later would carry a different meaning after that sentence was spoken? In the Korean entertainment world, timing is a language of its own. No statement is ever truly neutral, especially when uttered on the eve of a major event. Park Hyung Sik is known as a careful and professional individual. He understands the consequences of every word. It is therefore difficult to believe that this statement emerged without deliberate consideration. This is where the academic dimension becomes apparent. We are not only analyzing what was said, but why it was said now, and in this particular way. The relationship between Jungkook and Taehyung has itself passed through various publicly documented phases. From their trainee days, to debut, to the peak of global popularity, and into periods where group dynamics seem to shift over time. ARMY members who have followed this journey from the beginning possess a powerful collective memory. They remember small moments that the general public may have forgotten. When Park Hyung Sik touched upon one aspect of that journey, he seemed to reactivate that entire archive of memory. The sentence he spoke did not stand alone. It connected fragments that had long appeared separate. An old comment by Jungkook that once sounded ordinary now seemed imbued with new meaning. A past expression on Taehyung's face was replayed through a different lens. And here lay the greatest surprise. Not because there was a bombastic new fact, but because old facts suddenly arranged themselves into a clearer pattern. For some army members, this moment felt like emotional validation. For years, they had often been dismissed, accused of reading too much into things. Park Hyung Sik's statement, though not explicit, seemed to suggest that such sensitivity was not entirely misplaced. There was indeed a layer of reality not visible on the surface. Yet this validation arrived with a new burden. If what they had felt all along had some basis, what would the consequences be for Jungkook and Taehyung moving forward? This question becomes even more pressing as the tour approaches. A major stage does not only display music and choreography, it displays emotion. Every interaction will now be reinterpreted in the light of that statement. Will Jungkook and Taehyung become more cautious? Or will they perform as they always have, allowing the public to draw its own conclusions? This tension creates an anticipation that is almost painful. Park Hyung Sik himself appears to be aware of the domino effect of his words. In his follow-up remarks, he emphasized the importance of respecting personal space and individual processes. At first glance, this may sound like a standard closing line, but read in context, it actually reinforces the impression that there is something that deserves protection rather than denial. Protection of what? Of whom? These questions continue to echo. Emotionally, ARMY now stands at a crossroads. There is hope, but there is also anxiety. Hope that honesty, however partial, has finally found a path forward. Anxiety that this openness could bring new pressure upon Jungkook and Taehyung. The Korean entertainment industry has not always been kind to human complexity. This is where the role of the fan community becomes crucial. Will it become a safe space, or an additional source of pressure? Viewed more broadly, Park Hyung Sik's statement reflects a generational shift in how public figures speak. It is no longer entirely bound to the old pattern of total denial. There is an attempt to speak honestly, without crossing boundaries. This approach feels mature, but it is also risky. Partial honesty often sparks wild interpretation. Yet perhaps this is the only way forward without destroying existing foundations. When the tour finally begins, every performance by Jungkook and Taehyung will be read as a text alongside this statement. Old songs may sound different. Small gestures may ignite lengthy discussions. And amid all of this, ARMY will continue to ask, is this what Park Hyung Sik meant? Is this the clue he planted? What is certain is that this moment marks a new chapter. Not only in the narrative surrounding Jungkook and Taehyung, but also in the relationship between idols and fans. There is an implicit acknowledgement that fans are not merely consumers, but active participants in shared meaning-making. Yet such participation demands emotional maturity. Not every mystery needs to be fully solved. At the end of the day, the sentence from Park Hyung Sik that left ARMY in silence may never have a single, definitive interpretation. It will continue to live on in discussion, analysis, and reflection. But one thing is undeniable: its timing, the depth of its implications, and its impact on collective emotion have made it one of the most significant moments leading into this tour. A moment that reminds us that behind the glittering stage lights and roaring cheers are human beings with stories far more complex than they appear. And when the stage lights finally turn on, when the first music swells and Jungkook and Taehyung step forward before thousands of expectant eyes, one question will linger in the air, unspoken, yet felt by all. Have we just witnessed the beginning of a great revelation, or the reaffirmation that not all secrets are meant to be fully revealed? As that lingering question hangs in the air, it quietly reshapes the way silence itself is understood. Silence, in this context, is no longer emptiness. It becomes a language, a deliberate pause filled with intention. For years, Jungkook and Taehyung have mastered this language, communicating as much through what they do not say as through what they show. Park Hyung Sik's words, sparse yet weighted, seem to acknowledge that silence is sometimes the safest place for truths that are too fragile to withstand the glare of constant scrutiny. What makes this moment especially haunting is the realization that ARMY, collectively, may have been standing closer to that truth than anyone realized. Not because they were told outright, but because they felt it. Emotional intelligence, often dismissed in fan culture, suddenly takes center stage. The way fans sense shifts in energy, subtle distance, or quiet reconnections now appears less like fantasy and more like an intuitive reading of human dynamics unfolding under extreme pressure. The pressure itself cannot be overstated. Jungkook and Taehyung grew up under a spotlight that magnifies not only success, but vulnerability. Every personal evolution is frozen, replayed, and debated. In such an environment, maintaining authenticity becomes a delicate balancing act. Park Hyung Sik's intervention, subtle as it was, feels like an acknowledgement of that struggle. It suggests that some narratives cannot be flattened into headlines without losing their humanity. As discussions deepen, a new tone emerges among ARMY. There is less insistence on definitive answers and more contemplation. People begin revisiting old footage not with the hunger to prove something, but with empathy. Smiles once labeled as fan service are reconsidered as moments of comfort. Distance once framed as conflict is re-examined as self-preservation. This shift marks a quiet maturation of the fandom, shaped not by revelation, but by restraint. The impending tour adds another layer of emotional complexity. Tours are often described as celebrations, but they are also tests. They test stamina, unity, and emotional resilience. Knowing that every interaction will be watched through a newly sensitized lens raises the stakes immeasurably. Jungkook and Taehyung are not only performers stepping onto a stage, they are individuals carrying the weight of expectation, interpretation, and now, renewed curiosity sharpened by Park Hyung Sik's words. There is an almost paradoxical hope that emerges from this tension. Hope that the stage might become a place of quiet honesty rather than performative perfection. Hope that even within choreography and rehearsed moments, authenticity can still surface in fleeting glances or unguarded laughter. And hope that ARMY, armed with greater awareness, will choose patience over pressure. Park Hyung Sik's role in this evolving narrative remains fascinating precisely because of its limits. He did not position himself as a revealer of truth, but as a boundary marker. By speaking just enough, he signaled that there is a line, one that should not be crossed lightly. In doing so, he reframed curiosity itself, challenging fans and media alike to ask not only what they want to know, but whether they have the right to know it. This reframing is perhaps the most profound impact of all. It transforms the discourse from consumption to consideration. Instead of demanding clarity, the conversation begins to revolve around care. How do we support artists whose lives unfold in public, but whose inner worlds remain private? How do we reconcile our emotional investment with respect for their autonomy? As the days count down to the tour's opening night, anticipation grows heavier, not louder. There is a sense that something meaningful will happen, even if it cannot be named. And maybe that is the point. Not every chapter needs to be announced with certainty. Some are meant to be felt in real time, experienced collectively, and remembered not for what was revealed, but for how it changed the way we look, listen, and wait. Did I end that waiting? ARMY finds itself united not by answers, but by understanding. An understanding that Jungkook and Taehyung's story, whatever its true shape, belongs first to them. Park Hyung Sik's sentence did not open a door wide. It simply reminded everyone that a door exists, and that behind it are lives deserving of patience, dignity, and quiet respect. That quiet respect, once acknowledged, begins to alter the emotional atmosphere surrounding everything that follows. Conversations soften. Assertions turn into reflections. Even speculation, which once raced ahead recklessly, slows into something more cautious, more human. It is as if Park Hyung-sik's words did not merely reveal a possibility, but imposed a moral pause, a collective inhale before deciding how to move forward. In this pause, the image of Jungkook and Taehyung subtly shifts. They are no longer viewed solely as symbols, ships, or narrative anchors for endless theories, but as individuals navigating an extraordinary life under conditions few could endure. Their bond, whatever its true nature, starts to be seen less as a puzzle to be solved and more as a relationship shaped by time, pressure, affection, conflict, and growth. Complexity replaces simplicity, and in that complexity, something far more authentic emerges. The industry itself looms quietly in the background of this story. Korean entertainment has long thrived on controlled images and carefully curated silence. What Park Hyung-sik did, intentionally or not, was disrupt that rhythm just enough to expose its fragility. His calm, almost scholarly tone carried a subtext that resonated deeply. Not everything meaningful can survive being packaged. Some truths lose their integrity the moment they are forced into clarity. AS rehearsals continue and the tour edges closer. Insiders describe an atmosphere that feels different, not tense, but focused. Jungkook and Taehyung appear professional, grounded, and deeply immersed in their work. To the outside eye, nothing seems overtly changed. And yet, for those who have been paying attention, there is a sense of quiet resolve. Not defiance, not concealment, but acceptance of being seen while still choosing what to protect. Army, too, is changing in response. The community begins to police itself in ways rarely seen before. Calls for restraint grow louder. Fans remind one another that love does not require access, and support does not require confirmation. This evolution does not erase curiosity, but it reframes it, placing empathy at its center. It is a subtle but powerful shift, born from the realization that this moment is bigger than any single theory. When the tour finally opens, the energy in the venue feels almost reverent. The cheers are loud, but beneath them is something steadier, something deeper. As Jungkook and Taehyung step onto the stage, their presence commands attention not because of what might be revealed, but because of what is already understood. Their performance is tight, emotional, and alive with years of shared history. Every harmony carries weight. Every glance holds history. And yet, nothing feels forced. Some will leave the concert believing they saw confirmation of everything they ever suspected. Others will leave convinced that the mystery remains intact. But perhaps the most important outcome is neither. It is the shared realization that meaning does not always reside in answers. Sometimes, it lives in the way a moment is handled, with care, with restraint, and with an unspoken agreement between artist and audience. Long after the lights dim and the final notes fade, Park Hyung-sik's sentence continues to echo, not as a revelation, but as a reminder. A reminder that behind global fame are human connections that do not exist for public consumption. A reminder that silence can be intentional, protective, and even generous. And a reminder that waiting, when done with respect, can be its own form of understanding. In the end, this was never just about what Park Hyung-sik said. It was about when he said it, how he said it, and what he chose not to say. And in that delicate balance, ARMY found something unexpected, not closure, but clarity of a different kind. The clarity that some stories are not meant to be solved, only honored as they continue to unfold, quietly, just beyond the reach of certainty.